Russia's president has accused opponents of his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump of harming the U.S. by inventing stories about contacts with Russia. At his annual news conference, Vladimir Putin said contacts between the Trump team and Russian officials before last year's election were normal. He said the U.S. opposition was not treating those who elected Mr. Trump with respect. The Trump campaign is being investigated for collusion with Russia. U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded that Moscow tried to sway the presidential election in favor of Mr. Trump, but Mr. Putin denies the allegations. "It's all invented by those in opposition to Trump to make his work seem illegitimate," Mr. Putin said, when asked about the investigation. He added that Mr. Trump was responsible for some quite serious achievements but had not been in a position to improve relations with Russia. He expressed hope that this would happen, adding that globally there are many things we can do more effectively. Also mentioned by Mr. Putin. What about the election? Earlier Mr. Putin addressed the presidential elections, due to be held next year. He has already said he will stand for a fourth term, but announced that he would stand as an independent candidate rather than from the ruling United Russia Party. What does he think about the opposition? Asked why he had not faced any effective opponent for the presidency, he said the opposition had to come up with specific proposals to improve people's lives and had so far not done so. "It's not up to me to nurture competitors," he said. "But I've been thinking that our political environment must be competitive just like the economic environment. I hope this will happen, and the sooner the better." But he said if his opponents won in the presidential election next March, it would destabilize Russia. "Do you want attempted coups d'état?" he asked, in response to a question about the opposition. Mr. Putin did not mention opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who is banned from standing in the elections because of a criminal conviction. The Council of Europe has condemned the conviction as arbitrary and unfair. In response to Mr. Putin, Mr. Navalny tweeted, in Russian, a link to his recently published election program, with the words, "You're really trying very hard not to notice this." Election rival asks a question. Another opposition presidential candidate was noticed by the president, however. Ksenia Sobchak, a celebrity and political talk show host, has announced she will be running against Mr. Putin as a referendum on trust so that people can vote against him. She came to the news conference as a journalist for the opposition DAS TV and asked Mr. Putin about the repression of the opposition, including Mr. Navalny, and whether the authorities were afraid of competitors. He responded by warning of rabble-rousing politicians destabilizing the country, and he cited Ukraine as a country where instability was rife. "I'm sure that the overwhelming majority of Russians don't want this," he said, adding that he was not afraid of anyone. Mr. Putin is known for his marathon performances at his news conferences, where he frequently uses hard-hitting, colorful language. The record for a Putin news conference was set in 2008, at 4 hours 40 minutes. This year's, which went on for nearly 4 hours, has also set a record, with 1,640 journalists said to be accredited for the event. Putin has removed all serious rivals. Analysis, BBC Steve Rosenberg, Moscow. There was an element of farce to the president's end-of-year media extravaganza. Reporters shouted from their seats and waved signs to attract his attention and ask him a question. One man who asked Mr. Putin about fish admitted halfway through his question that he wasn't a reporter at all, but the head of a fish processing factory who had lined to get in. At one point, Mr. Putin pointed to a sign he thought read "Bye Bye Putin." Instead it read "Grandfather Putin" in the Tatar language. Russia isn't likely to be saying bye-bye to its president anytime soon. Mr. Putin will run for re-election next March and is expected to win. The system of power he has built in Russia, often referred to as managed democracy, has managed to remove all serious rivals. There will be other challengers, among them the liberal TV personality Ksenia Sobchak, who was at the conference. In the increasingly farcical world of Russian politics, Sobchak is widely viewed as a spoiler candidate, hired by the Kremlin to boost the legitimacy of the election and to split the opposition vote. Vladimir Putin, from spy to president. Putin still in fashion 15 years on. Vladimir Putin's formative German years,